I stopped breathing when I heard Aaron whispering to his mother through the study door. The divorce papers are almost ready, Mom. She has no idea what's coming. My coffee mug slipped from my hands, shattering on the marble floor. 23 years of marriage. And this was how I found out. My legs felt like jelly as I pressed myself against the wall, listening to them plot my downfall. She built that tech empire, but legally half of it's mine, Aaron continued. My lawyer says we can get even more if we play this right. His mother's cackle made my stomach turn. About time you got rid of that woman and took what you deserve. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. The man I'd loved since college, the man I'd shared my dreams with, was planning to destroy me. But Aaron had no idea who he was dealing with. I'd built a $500 million empire from nothing. I wasn't going down without a fight. The next morning, Aaron left his phone charging on the nightstand like always. My hands trembled as I picked it up, knowing I was about to confirm my worst fears. There it was, months of messages with divorce attorney William Hayes. She's vulnerable right now with the new product launch, Aaron had written. Perfect timing to strike. My blood ran cold reading Hayes' response. Will claim she neglected the marriage for business. Combined with the prenup loopholes I found, you'll walk away with everything. Everything. The company I'd bled for, the patents I'd developed, the fortune I'd earned working 18-hour days while he played golf with his buddies. My chest felt like it was on fire. There were dozens of messages discussing my weaknesses and how to exploit them in court. They'd been planning this for months, maybe years. I screenshot everything with shaking fingers, then carefully placed the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Aaron stirred in bed, and I pretended to be asleep, my mind racing with betrayal and rage. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything but the crushing weight of Aaron's betrayal. What would happen to my company? My employees? The revolutionary software we were about to launch? I'd sacrificed everything for our marriage, turning down lucrative job offers to stay in his hometown, supporting his failed business ventures with my own money, even putting his name on properties I'd bought. Now he wanted to take it all and leave me with nothing. That night, I locked myself in my home office and stared at our wedding photo on my desk. We looked so happy, so in love. Had it all been a lie? Had he been planning this from the beginning? My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant about tomorrow's board meeting. How could I face my team knowing my personal life was about to implode and potentially destroy everything we'd worked for? I was trapped, scared, and completely alone. But as I sat there in the darkness, something shifted inside me. Fear began transforming into something else, cold, calculated determination. Through tears of rage, I called my financial advisor Timothy Crawford at 6 a.m. I need an emergency meeting. Today. My voice was steadier than I felt. 2 hours later, I sat across from Timothy in his downtown office, watching his face pale as I explained the situation. Move everything to the trust fund I set up in the Cayman Islands, I whispered, glancing around the empty office. Every asset that's solely in my name. Quietly. Timothy had been handling my finances for 15 years. He knew exactly what Aaron was capable of. Victoria, he said slowly. Are you absolutely certain? This is a massive step. I slid Aaron's phone messages across the desk. Timothy's jaw tightened as he read them. That bastard, he muttered. Consider it done. We'll start the transfers tonight. By tomorrow morning, your personal fortune will be completely secure. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. Aaron thought he was playing chess, but he didn't know I was already 10 moves ahead. The hunted was about to become the hunter. That evening, I served Aaron his favorite dinner, grilled salmon with asparagus. He smiled at me like nothing had changed, like he hadn't spent the morning texting his lawyer about destroying my life. You seem stressed lately, honey, he said, cutting into his fish. Maybe you should take a break from work. His mother Alice nodded from across the table. She'd invited herself over again, something she'd been doing more frequently. Aaron is right, she said with fake concern. You work too hard. A woman your age should be focusing on her family. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled sweetly. You're both so caring. I'm lucky to have such a supportive family. Under the table, my hands were clenched into fists. Aaron and Alice exchanged a look, smug and satisfied. "We just want what's best for you," Aaron said, reaching for my hand. His touch made my skin crawl. "A fresh start might be exactly what you need." Alice nodded enthusiastically. "A chance to find yourself again." They had no idea that their fresh start was about to become their worst nightmare. The next morning, Aaron was whistling in the shower when the doorbell rang. A courier stood on our doorstep with an official envelope addressed to me. My heart stopped when I saw the law firm's name, Hayes and Associates. Inside were divorce papers that made my blood boil. According to their filing, I was an absent wife who had abandoned her marital duties in favor of obsessive career pursuits. They wanted half of everything, plus alimony, plus the house, plus my car. But the worst part was the character assassination, painting me as a cold, selfish woman who cared more about money than marriage. I was supposed to walk away with practically nothing while Aaron got to play the victim. The papers claimed I'd been emotionally abusive and financially controlling. It was all lies, but I knew how these things worked. Mudsticks. By the time I proved my innocence, my reputation would be destroyed. But Aaron had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed I would just roll over and take it. I folded the papers carefully and called my own attorney. Two could play this game. Alice barged into my living room without knocking, her face twisted with fake sympathy. "Oh, Victoria," she sighed dramatically. "I heard about the papers. This must be so hard for you." She sat down on my white sofa like she owned the place. "But honestly, darling, it's for the best. You and Aaron have been growing apart for years." Her voice dripped with condescension. "My advice? Take your clothes and whatever little personal items you want, and leave quietly. Don't make this messy." She leaned forward, her eyes cold despite her gentle tone. "Fighting will only embarrass you more. Everyone knows you neglected your marriage for that company of yours." I nodded politely, pouring her tea with steady hands. Inside, I was seething. This woman had been poisoning Aaron against me for years, and now she was here to gloat. "You're probably right, Alice," I said softly. "Maybe I should just accept it and move on." Her smile grew wider. "That's the spirit. Sometimes women like us need to know when we've lost." Little did she know, I was already several moves ahead in this chess game. That night, while Aaron slept beside me, $50 million silently shifted from our joint accounts into my offshore trust. Then another $100 million from my business accounts. By dawn, $300 million had vanished into untraceable financial instruments. The transfers were perfectly legal. All the money was mine to begin with, earned through my patents and company shares. I watched the numbers change on my laptop screen, feeling a savage satisfaction with each transaction. The next morning, Aaron stumbled into the kitchen looking confused. "Honey, I'm having trouble accessing our joint account. The bank says there's some kind of hold." His voice was casual, but I caught the edge of panic. I looked up from my coffee, tilting my head innocently. "Really? That's strange. Did you call them?" He was already pulling out his phone, dialing frantically. I watched him pace the kitchen, his face growing paler with each minute. "Yes, I understand there are security protocols, but this is my account too." His voice trailed off as he stared at his laptop screen, clicking refresh over and over. When he finally looked at me, his face was white as paper. "Victoria," Aaron said, trying to sound casual while his hands shook slightly. "Did you move some of our money around? For investments or something?" His lawyer coach tone didn't fool me. I could practically hear William Hayes whispering in his ear about being careful not to tip me off. I tilted my head, giving him my most innocent look. "Why would I do that? You handle all our joint finances, remember?" It was a lie. I'd been managing our money for years while he played golf, but I wanted to see him squirm. He forced a laugh, but sweat was beading on his forehead. Of course. I'm sure it's just a bank error. These things happen." But his fingers were already flying across his phone, probably texting his attorney in a panic. Over the next hour, I watched him make increasingly frantic calls to different banks. Each conversation left him more confused and desperate. "There has to be some mistake," he kept saying. By evening, he was pacing like a caged animal. Alice called 3 times, her shrill voice demanding updates. Aaron kept assuring her everything was under control, but we both knew it wasn't. The hunter was becoming the hunted. I met my attorney Rachel Morgan at a quiet cafe downtown, far from Aaron's usual haunts. She was everything William Hayes wasn't: sharp, ethical, and fiercely protective of her clients. "He's been planning this for months," I said, sliding a folder of evidence across the small table. Rachel's eyebrows rose as she read through Aaron's text messages with his lawyer. "This is incredibly damaging to their case," she said quietly. "They're essentially admitting to fraud and conspiracy." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Victoria, with what you've shown me, we don't just defend, we attack. We file first on our terms, and we make sure he never sees a penny of your money." For the first time in weeks, I felt truly powerful. "What do we need to do?" Rachel smiled like a shark scenting blood. "We file tomorrow morning. Full financial disclosure showing all assets are legitimately yours, character witnesses from your company, and we countersue for emotional distress and attempted fraud." She closed the folder with satisfaction. "By the time we're done, he'll be lucky to keep his golf clubs." At dinner that night, Aaron was unusually quiet, picking at his food while staring at his phone. Alice had joined us again, her constant presence becoming more irritating by the day. "You've been so tense lately, son," she said, patting his hand. "Remember, good things come to those who wait." Aaron glanced at me, then back at his plate. "Soon," he muttered under his breath, "I'll finally be free." He thought I couldn't hear him, but I caught every word. My phone was recording under my napkin, capturing his unconscious confession. Alice nodded knowingly. "Freedom is worth fighting for," she agreed. "Some people hold us back from our true potential." Their coded conversation continued throughout the meal, veiled references to new beginnings and cutting dead weight. Each comment was another nail in their coffin. Aaron had no idea he was building the case against himself with every bitter word. By dessert, I had enough recorded evidence to bury him in court. Let them plot and scheme. I was documenting every treacherous moment, building an unshakable foundation for my attorney to destroy them both. I was walking past Alice's room when I heard her bragging on the phone to her sister Helen. "Oh, Helen, you should see the divorce papers William drafted. Aaron will get everything, the house, the business, all of it." Her voice was full of malicious glee. That uppity wife of his built quite an empire, but she forgot who really holds the power in a marriage. I pressed myself against the wall, my phone recording every word. "She'll walk away with nothing but the clothes on her back," Alice continued with a laugh. "My son deserves better than some workaholic who thinks money is everything." Helen's voice was too faint to hear, but Alice's responses painted a clear picture. "William says it's a slam dunk. She's been so focused on her precious company, she never saw this coming. Aaron will be set for life." The cruel satisfaction in her voice made me sick. This woman had been living in my house, eating my food, pretending to care about me while plotting my destruction. I slipped away before she finished the call. Another piece of damning evidence safely stored on my phone. The next morning, I watched from my office window as a courier walked up to Aaron's downtown office building. At exactly 9 a.m., he'd be served with my divorce filing, a complete reversal of his carefully laid plans. My phone buzzed 30 minutes later with a text from Aaron. "How? Dare. You." 3 words that confirmed everything I needed to know. He wasn't confused or hurt. He was angry that I'd beaten him to the punch. Rachel had crafted a masterpiece. Our filing painted Aaron as a manipulative schemer who had married me for money and spent years planning to steal my life's work. We had the text messages, the recorded conversations, financial records showing his dependence on my income, and testimony from colleagues about his constant resentment of my success. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up with calls from Aaron, Alice, and William Hayes. I ignored them all. By noon, word was spreading through our social circle. "Did you hear about Victoria and Aaron?" I could imagine the whispered conversations at the country club. The narrative Aaron had tried to control was slipping away from him, and he knew it. Aaron burst through our front door like a hurricane, his face red with rage. "You backstabbing witch," he screamed, waving my divorce papers in the air. "How could you do this to me? To us?" I stood in the foyer, perfectly calm despite the storm raging in front of me. Do what, Aaron? Tell the truth. His eyes were wild, desperate. Truth? You've turned this into some kind of war. We could have handled this quietly, civilly. I laughed bitterly. You mean I could have quietly handed over everything I worked for while you painted me as a terrible wife? He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You don't know what you've started. I'll destroy you in court. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you really are. But his threats felt hollow now. I held all the cards and we both knew it. No, Aaron, I said softly. You betrayed me first. You and your mother spent months plotting behind my back. I just refused to be your victim. He stared at me for a long moment, probably seeing me clearly for the first time in years. Then he turned and left without another word. The courtroom was packed with reporters and curious onlookers. Aaron's case had attracted attention because of my company's recent IPO announcement, and everyone wanted to see the drama unfold. William Hayes strutted around like a peacock, clearly confident in his strategy. Your Honor, he declared dramatically, my client deserves half of the marital assets accumulated during their 23-year marriage. Ms. Victoria has systematically excluded him from her business empire, while benefiting from his emotional support and guidance. I almost laughed out loud. Aaron's emotional support had consisted mainly of complaining about my work schedule and spending my money. But Rachel was ready. Your Honor, the evidence will show that Mr. Aaron entered this marriage with fraudulent intent, systematically manipulated the defendant, and conspired with his mother to steal assets he had no legal claim to. She presented our evidence methodically. The recorded conversations, the text messages, the financial records showing Aaron had contributed nothing to my business success. Hayes's confident expression crumbled with each revelation. Aaron slumped in his chair, realizing his carefully constructed narrative was falling apart. The judge's face grew increasingly stern as the evidence mounted. During the lunch recess, Alice cornered me in the courthouse hallway. Her face was twisted with rage, all pretense of civility gone. You evil, manipulative witch, she hissed, pointing her finger inches from my face. You've ruined everything. My son gave you the best years of his life, and this is how you repay him. Other people in the hallway turned to stare at the commotion. I remained perfectly composed, knowing every word was another nail in their coffin. Alice, I said calmly, your son tried to steal everything I worked for. I simply protected myself. She laughed bitterly. Protected yourself? You've destroyed a good man. Aaron loved you, supported your dreams, and you threw it all away for money. Her voice was getting shriller, drawing more attention. You're a cold, heartless woman who cares more about dollars than human beings. I looked her straight in the eye. No, Alice. You and Aaron are the ones who reduced our marriage to a business transaction. I just refused to be robbed. Security guards were moving toward us, and I walked away before she could respond. Let her rant. Every witness would remember her unhinged behavior when they testified about Aaron's character. Word of the divorce proceedings spread through Aaron's business network like wildfire. I watched from my office as his consulting firm began hemorrhaging clients. Partners who had once competed for his attention were now distancing themselves from the scandal. Did you hear what Aaron tried to pull? I overheard someone saying at a networking event. His wife built a tech empire, and he thought he could just take it in the divorce. Unbelievable. His reputation for integrity, carefully cultivated over decades, evaporated overnight. The business community was small, and news traveled fast. Aaron's phone, once constantly buzzing with opportunities, fell silent. Potential investors backed away from deals, worried about being associated with someone who would betray his own wife for money. Alice called me repeatedly, alternating between threats and pleas, but I never answered. The isolation was eating at both of them. Aaron had bet everything on his scheme succeeding quickly and quietly. Instead, he'd started a war he couldn't win and lost his standing in the community he'd tried so hard to impress. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people see who someone really is. 3 weeks after the court hearing, my phone rang at midnight. Aaron's voice was broken, barely recognizable. Victoria, please. We need to talk. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go back to how things were. The desperation in his voice might have moved me once, but I was done being manipulated. Aaron, I said quietly, you didn't make mistakes. You made calculated choices to betray and rob me. Those aren't mistakes, that's who you are. He was crying now, something I'd never heard in 23 years of marriage. I love you. I've always loved you. My mother, she convinced me that you didn't care about our marriage anymore. She said you'd leave me eventually anyway, so I should protect myself. Even now he was trying to shift blame. You wanted my money, Aaron. Not me. If you'd ever loved me, you couldn't have done what you did. He begged for another hour, promising to make things right, swearing his mother had misled him, claiming he'd been confused and scared. But I knew better. I'd heard his real voice in those recorded conversations, seen his true nature in those text messages. When I finally hung up, I felt nothing but relief. Alice's revenge tour was just beginning. She spread poison wherever she went, calling me greedy, selfish, and heartless to anyone who would listen. At the grocery store, the post office, her book club. No venue was safe from her bitter campaign. That woman destroyed my son, she told the pharmacist while I waited behind her in line. Aaron gave her everything, and she threw it away for money. Some women just don't appreciate a good man. But her strategy backfired. People in our small town knew me, knew my character, knew how hard I'd worked to build my company while supporting Aaron's failed ventures for years. Alice has always been bitter. I heard Mrs. Patterson whisper to her friend at the bank. Victoria's the one with class. She never said a bad word about Aaron, even when he was out every night playing poker with his buddies. The community was choosing sides, and Alice was losing. Her shrill accusations only made her look desperate and vindictive. Aaron tried to rein her in, but she was beyond reason, consumed with rage at seeing her golden retirement plan crumble. Every public outburst damaged their case further. In the quiet of my home office, away from lawyers and accusations, I made a decision that surprised even me. I transferred $10 million to the local women's shelter, another $10 million to organizations supporting victims of domestic abuse, and $20 million to a foundation providing legal aid for women going through messy divorces. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely proud of something besides legal victories and financial maneuvering. The money I'd fought so hard to protect was finally serving a purpose that mattered. Susan, the shelter director, called me in tears. Victoria, this donation will help hundreds of women escape dangerous situations and rebuild their lives. You're literally saving lives. I thought about all the women who didn't have offshore accounts or teams of lawyers to protect them from scheming spouses. My fight with Aaron had shown me how vulnerable any woman could be, no matter how successful she appeared. That night I slept better than I had in months. Not because I'd beaten Aaron and Alice, but because I'd turned their betrayal into something meaningful. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation. Aaron's desperation reached new heights when he showed up at Alice's apartment, hat in hand like a beggar. I knew this because Helen, Alice's sister, called to warn me about their increasingly erratic behavior. Victoria, she said quietly, I think you should know, Aaron is broke. He's been borrowing money from Alice, but she's running out too. They're both talking about more extreme measures. The golden boy was learning that schemes have consequences. Alice had spent years living beyond her means, assuming Aaron's big payday would fund her retirement. Now, faced with mounting legal bills and no income, she was turning on him. You promised me her fortune. I heard through Helen's description of their screaming matches. You said this was foolproof. Aaron had burned every bridge, alienated every friend, destroyed every business relationship for a plan that never had a chance of succeeding. His lawyer had already started distancing himself when it became clear Aaron couldn't pay his fees. The man who'd thought he could outsmart me was learning that reality doesn't care about your ego. Justice has a way of being poetic sometimes. The final court session was anticlimactic. Judge Morrison had reviewed all the evidence, heard all the testimony, and his decision was swift and decisive. The evidence clearly shows that Mr. Aaron entered into a conspiracy to defraud his wife of assets she had legitimately earned, he stated from the bench. The defendant's attempts to portray herself as an absent or negligent spouse are contradicted by overwhelming evidence of her financial support, emotional availability, and commitment to the marriage. Aaron's shoulders sagged as the judge continued. Furthermore, the recorded conversations and text messages demonstrate premeditation and malicious intent that cannot be ignored by this court. The final decree was everything Rachel had promised. I kept all my assets, the house, the cars, and Aaron was ordered to pay my legal fees. He didn't even look at me as the judge signed the papers. Alice sobbed dramatically in the gallery, but her tears fell on unsympathetic ears. I walked out of that courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because I'd won, but because I was finally free from people who'd never truly loved me. The legal battle was over, but my real life was just beginning. 6 months later, I stood in my new home. A beautiful glass house overlooking the ocean, far from the toxic memories of my old life. My tech company had gone public successfully, making me even wealthier than before. But more importantly, I'd built something meaningful with the Victoria Foundation, helping women escape situations like mine. My phone rang constantly with interview requests and speaking opportunities. "How did you find the strength to fight back?" reporters asked. The answer was simple. I'd finally learned to value myself as much as I valued my work. Aaron and Alice were distant memories now, cautionary tales I occasionally shared with other women facing similar betrayals. My new house had no photos of my old life, no reminders of wasted years. Instead, the walls displayed pictures of the women my foundation had helped, the shelters we'd built, the lives we'd saved. I'd turned Aaron's greed into something beautiful. Proof that sometimes the best revenge is living well. Freedom, I discovered, wasn't just about keeping my money. It was about finally being free to become who I was always meant to be. 2 years later, I was shopping for groceries when I saw them. Aaron and Alice, looking older, worn down, bitter. Aaron was pushing a cart with generic brands while Alice complained loudly about prices. $40 for a week's groceries used to be nothing, she was saying. Now look at us. They froze when they spotted me in the organic produce section. My cart filled with everything they could no longer afford. Aaron started to approach, but Alice grabbed his arm, whispering harshly. I could have been cruel, could have flaunted my success, or made them feel smaller than they already did. Instead, I smiled politely, nodded once, and walked past them toward the checkout. They weren't worth my energy anymore. My revenge was complete not because I'd destroyed them, but because I'd built something better from the ashes of their betrayal. As I loaded groceries into my Tesla, I saw them through the store window, still standing frozen where I'd left them. Some people never learn that the best way to keep what you have is to deserve what you want. I drove home to my ocean view and my meaningful work, leaving them to their small, bitter lives. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply refusing to let toxic people steal your joy. If this story of justice and resilience inspired you, please subscribe for more empowering stories of people who refuse to be victims. Share this with anyone who needs a reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and helping others do the same. Your support helps us tell more stories of triumph over betrayal. Thanks for watching.